Cetitan is finally banned from Inu after a bit over a month of snow teams getting to exist, people looking for what counterplay they feel exists in the tier, and a whole bunch of tournaments. People decided, yeah, no, we don't want to deal with Cetitan anymore. Look at this graph. I am actually like pretty stunned by just how convincingly people wanted it gone. Not that I didn't know people wanted it gone, but the fact that over half the recipients put it at a 5 is pretty absurd to me. So we're going to talk about this survey that we did in Inu. There are some other things in here as well. I'm going to give my opinion on all of it. And of course, what I believe it means for Inu going forward. Because while I'm the TL, I lead this shit. I get to decide what we do with this. Y'all are lucky I voted. Y'all are so lucky, man. And I'll get into that in a moment, of course. Like and subscribe if you're not already subscribed. Even if you are subscribed, leave a comment down below. If you've gotten 1 minute into this video, I need y'all to comment down, pack watch Cetitan, rest in piss, you will not be missed. So, apparently nowadays, we're not actually allowed to ban things based on a survey. We still have to council vote. Y'all want to see this council vote right here? 6 out of 8 voted to ban it. You need 2/3 for a ban to happen. Y'all are so lucky that I did not vote my genuine opinion and instead just said, you know what? The community wants it gone this badly? Sure, I'll give it to them. I could have still said do not ban. After ZS and Django said do not ban, this shit would still be around. So don't ever tell me that I don't do anything for y'all. And the logic here is simple. Do I think Cetitan should have been banned? Hell no. God no. This mon's not broken and I think it's very overrated. But the reality of it is this. I think when you do a survey, it means a lot more than just the sentiment you hear, because oftentimes you just hear a lot of yap and the loudest voices are always going to rise to the top. And even if the loudest voices think it should be banned, that doesn't mean that's what the majority thinks. It also doesn't mean that it's the most convincing ban case. It could have been a 3.5 or to like a 3.8 average. It ended up with a 4.2. That is insane. That's like when we had Florges way at the beginning of Gen 9. And we did a survey on it, Florges had about this, maybe even a little higher. And that was also kind of a case of people weren't entirely sure, I think, on council, just how, not how good Florges was, rather how strongly people felt about it, though. And so we did the survey, it was like, okay, we'll see how it is. And then Florges pulled in some absurd average, too. So to see Titan do this, especially considering my difference of opinion, because I thought Florges was also worth at least looking into back then. I didn't think Titan was at all right now. This is just the easiest thing for me to say, yeah, no, okay, we should ban it. People feel that strongly? Yeah, it should get banned immediately. And so despite my opinion on it being, yeah, no, it's clearly not the problem. It's like at most the third biggest issue with snow and hyper offense in general. I'm not going to deprive the people of getting the meta they want when we have it in numerical form. So that's why I voted ban, even though I still don't think that it was a good Mon 2 ban. I'm perfectly happy to at this point see the number and go, yeah, I'm not going to deprive the community of what they want. So, what can I say? But yeah, Titan goes, and I don't think this fundamentally changes a lot for the tier at large. The main thing that it does, though, is it makes people feel a lot better about general team building, not having to prep for one of the most dynamic sweepers out there. And I guess dynamic's not maybe the best word to use. One of the most immediate sweepers. I think that's a better way of putting it, because the Titan is a belly drum sweeper that also gets to operate with a speed boost and have priority. There's a lot of difference in how you have to talk about counterplay. I'm gonna keep hammering this into people until the masses keep this in mind. There are sweepers that you cannot go into a discussion talking about how do I check it when it's boosted. That you just can't do that and think that you're gonna get a list of like 5 or 6 or 7 mons that are reliable switching. It just isn't reasonable. And when you frame discussions like that, it comes off as incredibly bad faith. And it very much like you do not want to actually have a discussion. You're just saying, oh look, I can't check the +6 speed boosted mon. Yeah, no shit, you can't. Why the hell do you think you should be able to reliably? What world do we live in? Because Pokemon is not as simple as that. It's not black and white. A lot of Pokemon, when it comes down to how you check stuff, comes down to offensive pressure. How do you deny Titan the setup opportunities? And I know a lot of people, for what it's worth, because this is not everyone that thought Titan was broken, in their opinion. You had people like Lucario, shoutouts to him. He said, hey, I think Titan is just not easy enough to prevent setup with. I don't think Stealth Rock chips enough. I think too often, Veil gets set, and Titan just easily gets out and sets up. And look, that's fair. If that's your opinion, I ain't gonna say that that's, bullshit. That's how you feel. And it's like the same people that I saw say Titan was broken even with a Bomb Snow. Way back before Cinccino or Ninetales dropped. I think that's one where I will say, I think you're wrong. And because I don't think there's any data to suggest that this was the case. No one was using it. But you know what? Look, at the end of the day, if you did think back then that it was overpowered, I can't really change your mind then. I think it's interesting that you weren't, talking about it back then, trying to say, hey, this should be suspect tested or council voted on. I think it's interesting that you weren't using it in tournaments. But hey, I mean, you thought it back then, so there's that. But back on the topic of Titan counterplay, yeah, I do think that it's one of those mons that simply requires you to be more proactive against it. You cannot play in a way that gives it free setup opportunity. It's very much like a mon like Cloyster, where, yeah, I mean, when a mon shell smashes, the counterplay to it is not exactly that enthusiastic. It's a bit better than Titan, of course, because it's only +2 instead of +6. But it's another mon where, yeah, oftentimes it was boosting. And if you're, like one check to it that maybe could stomach the +2 hit was weakened enough, yeah, you were probably just losing the game on the spot because it's a shell smash sweeper. Similar mons are like, Dreadnought in previous NU metas, back when we did end up actually banning Dreadnought. And you could even look at the Quiver Dance or Icorios, where they're not mons that necessarily require that same level of immediate response nowadays, because they're running these, bulky Quiver Dance sets, so it takes a little bit of time for them to get going. But you could even just look at way back at the very beginning of the gen. Quiver Dance or Ikorio required a super immediate response because they were going 2 attacks, offensive EVs, and they were going for the stupid, terrestrialization mechanic abuse. Where, oh, haha, you thought that you checked me with that Pokemon. Yeah, no, now my Revelation Dance is super effective. Get owned, loser. All this to say, at the end of the day, look, I had my opinion. I made it very clear that Alolan Ninetales is very obviously, in my mind, the breaking point, given how ass Cetitan had been for so long. And then all of a sudden, when Tails drops, people's tune immediately changes. To me, that says a lot about what the issue was. If you thought Titan was broken the whole time, great. I don't know why you weren't using it, but okay, fair. I guess you had, as Toother said, he just has honor, I guess. And yeah, the one thing I think about when I'm trying to get wins in tournaments is honor. But yeah, we banned out Titan now. Again, like 80% of people put it at a 4 or a 5. I'm not gonna vote against that, no matter how strongly I think that it shouldn't have been banned. In the survey, I'm one of these people that gave it a 1. And part of that was me also saying, like, look, at the end of the day, this is not the route we should take if we think Snow's a problem. Instead, Alolan Ninetales, I give a 5 to that. And the reason for that is because I think more than just the Cetitan HO builds were a problem, if you're looking at just the meta at large. I've voiced my opinion, I do not love building in this tier right now, because I think that consistently building anything other than offense or hyper offense is kind of tough. And I think that's maybe just partly the generation, whether it's Terra itself or just the fact that we do not have a lot of great glue mons to make some of these, slower, like balance or even bulky builds work all that well. And I mean, naturally, I'm more of a balanced player, so when the meta's like that, I'm just less happy. And I think Tails, though, is a big reason that HO is so strong. You have fast Veil, you have fast Encore, this mon is setting Veil a billion times, and it's not just the Titan that's sweeping. You got the Oricorios, you got Toxtricity, you got Water Tauros, you got Flygon, you got Cinccino, you got Scyther, you got I'm gonna say Dreadnought. Let's be fair. Dreadnought's not really seeing usage, but this is like my one take. I think Dreadnought probably could get used more. I shouldn't say that because there's a team tour going on, and maybe I want to use, but I don't care. What do you care? You think it matters that you know I might recommend Dreadnought one week? I may never recommend it again. But I also think Nasty Plot Tails is like quite strong, and I do believe we've seen that manifest at least a bit. Not broken levels of strong, by the way. It's just it adds another level to how you have to deal with it. Fortunately, it is generally pretty obvious based on team comp if it's Plot Tails versus just standard Veil support, which I think helps. But it adds that wrinkle. Specs as well exists. Specs is not broken at all. It's a cool set. I think it's even like at least worth calling good. It's just not like the Veil support. And that comes down to why I voted at a 5. Partly because people were so adamant about wanting something done with Snow, and to at least say, hey, I'll vote something in accordance with that. I voted a 5 to Tails because, yeah, in my mind, that is the true enabler. Now it's up at a 2.57. This is unlikely to result in anything unless something big changes, which could just mean over time HO stays the same level of strength and people go, okay, maybe Tails is too much. But maybe not, because Cinccino's also here, and Cinccino is also viewed as one of the top enablers for these Snows and these hazardless HOs. Tidy Up being the best form of hazard control in the tier while also making Cinccino a great sweeper. I mean, it does mean a lot, and it kind of plays into the same type of stuff that Alolan Ninetales does, where it's just such a dominating supportive presence that I do believe it should have also gotten a bit of look at before Titan did. The way I put it in a lot of discussions is I thought that Cetitan's brokenness had too many confounding variables, and what that means is there's too many other things at play here to say that it's Titan. Things that were not here back when Titan saw 0 usage and no one gave a fuck are now here, and now people are calling Titan broken. Like, I do not think that mon should be getting looked at. And the logic of often being it adds nothing to the tier, I just don't find compelling. I don't really care if you think that it adds nothing to the tier. That's not an argument for tiering. That's never been a case to ban something. If it was, we'd ban Dreadnought right now. It adds nothing to the tier. You know? So, anyhow. Cinccino gets mentioned a lot though too. In part even just with Snow. The fact that Tidy Up and also it being good at kind of helping with Cetitan. I don't feel like their offensive synergy was necessarily that huge in terms of overlapping checks. That plays more to HO at a whole, but Tidy Up plus Encore being so good at helping facilitate Cetitan sweeps was certainly a point of contention, and is why some people did actually say Cinccino should get looked at instead of Titan, maybe in the form of a suspect test. But also we can go back to what I said about HO and just this hazards list build that people go. Because, yeah, Scyther gets supported super well by it. Cetitan got super well supported by it. You even have Oricorios who could justifiably say get supported super well by it. Diancie gets supported super well by it because you're talking about overwhelming steel types. Something Django and I both have talked about in the NU Council chat, where the style of HO that you just see right now is steel overload. With Pokemon like, say, Scyther, Toxtricity, Cinccino, previously Titan, maybe Alolan Sandslash gets a little bit of usage now in its place. And even like the mono air slashing Oricorios, you can throw those on there as well with a Key Berry and have a lot of success there. You've got, I feel like there's at least one other mon I meant to say here, and I can't remember. Flygon, because DD-Gon's good at breaking down Bronzong. And even Earthworm, if you tech like Fire Punch or Fire Blast. All that, though, goes into just, yeah, I mean, Cinccino enables quite literally the strongest form of hyper offense, whether it's Snow or just generic HO. So I get why people also were looking at that. That's kind of what I'm talking about, both of these being, though, such big confounding variables for Titan, because it also could easily fit on those builds. These mons did more overall as well. So, I personally, as Eternally says here, 3.25, it's high enough at least to where we should keep an eye on it, because more people than not put them on the higher end. You see here, this is over 40%. This is just a notch below a quarter of our respondents. So almost double the respondents said Cinccino basically should be suspected or quick banned, compared to the people saying, oh, it's not a problem at all. So we'll keep an eye on Cinccino. I do think if I'm proven correct, it'll be as a result of Hyper Offense just not seeing a noticeable drop-off, even with Titan's ban. We'll see, though. And in other fill-in things, so Basque Legion I'm going to talk about first. I actually am one of the people that put Basque Legion in the anything else you think needs consideration response. And the reason for it is I think Basque Legion's substitute set, seeing a ton more use nowadays, has demonstrated that it simply does not have adequate counterplay long term. Now, there's a caveat to it. I think offense is the best style, and so offense doesn't really care. The problem with offense, then, is you have to deal with Scarf Basque Legion, which just one-shots almost your entire team with a Wave Crash. And this does get exacerbated a bit nowadays, because there's been a drop-off in usage of both Water Tauros and Toxicroak. They're both just not as good nowadays. Water Tauros has to do with Amoonguss, as well as even just like Gastro Vaporeon, maintaining high usage or even increasing at points, whereas Toxicroak, the big thing for it is the Gastrodon Renaissance. And that makes Legion so much better into the offense matchup, and Scarf Legion in general is a strong mon. Whereas with Substitute, it completely flips the counterplay, because now that mon does not care if you have a Vaporeon. I'm subbing up, and I just get to start free firing. You've got a lot of techs as well to beat up on your counterplay, so something like a Water Tauros, if you're worried about that, you can go a special Basque Legion set with Substitute, and your Shadow Balls are actually going to do quite a lot, and you can EV in such a way to where you don't really care about Water Tauros' attacks. Not that you would anyway, you resist its stabs, but you take even less from them as well. It also helps, of course, too, though, like I was saying, there's some other meta things too. Water Tauros falling off in favor of Fire Tauros. Now, you could argue there's a caveat there, it runs Wisp a lot, but this just goes back to running Special Legion. We see so much of it that I don't think it's actually a huge deal. And then, of course, too, Rain teams. We don't see a lot of Rain right now. I do want to wait and see how that turns around with Titan gone. I still think Alolan Ninetales will be so common that Rain maybe doesn't truly step back up, but Rain obviously throws another wrinkle in it, and Legion is just absurd on Rain, but not really a huge reason that I think it's too much. Oricorio being here, I think this is just saying Oricorio in general. At this point, of course, we banned Pom Pom a while ago, Sensu just got banned. There's a discussion to be had that Oricorio itself is just too much for NU, because it doesn't really matter which one you're using, because most of the time they just run Air Slash. All of them can do the same thing. It all depends on how you feel about that initial defensive typing. Electric Flying is, of course, Zapdos typing. That is incredible. Ghost Flying is a bit different in terms of your outlook. Trying to remember if there was like a particular mon that we really hated that Sensu got to set up on as well. I think if anything with Sensu, it ended up being Revelation Dance sets were viewed as less memey compared to Pom Pom, where no one ran Mono Rev Dance. You were just way too vulnerable to being walled if you did, whereas with Sensu, there were a lot more devious things you could do. And now we got Pawuga and Bailey as the last two ones. I will never pronounce Pau correctly. I'm so sorry. Pawuga is just funnier to say. But now you got those, and it's like, yeah, in theory, there's not really much drop-off. The only noticeable change is maybe with Choreo Bailey, and that's a fire one. You can't run the non-boot sets as easily, though, because Stealth Rock then really is a big issue. I'll once again reference Cinccino will just go on those builds and tidy up the rocks away, but it does make it a lot less simple to get in and set up at a good amount of HP. Because you're losing half your health instead of a quarter, that obviously necessitates a bit more support. We'll see how that goes, but I do think people want to look at whether or not Oricorio itself is just too much of a cancer to the tier. Now, I will say, Grassy Terrain, because we can segue to the last point I want to mention in this video, I think Grassy Terrain is maybe also something that needs to be looked at. Because maybe Thwacky is too good of a... Thwacky's too good. It's really just Grassy Surge. But perhaps that's the breaking point, because so many Pokemon at this point have been banned, either mostly due to, or in part due to Grassy Seed sets. And at a point, yeah, is it just Grassy Terrain is too good? Or is it something else? Like, is it just these mods were going to be too good anyway? Because I don't think any mod has been banned entirely due to. you just have a lot of mons where I think the primary focus was on Grassy Terrain. So, like, we can go all the way back in tier, like, Crest, Necrozma, Mew stuff. None of those were banned fully due to terrain. Instead, a good amount, though, of their viability came from terrain, whereas a lot of it also came from their just natural toolkit. Something like Iron Thorns is very similar, where it had a good role on terrain, but it wasn't the main reason, it was just a big reason. With the Oricorios, I feel like that's where you start getting to where terrain is perhaps the main reason, because the grassy seed sets are just really what you see the most and what they have the most success with. Keyberry maybes, contendable, or what's the word? You could argue Keyberry is equal enough to where, is it really terrain or is it just Oricorio? And I'd give you that. But yeah, we've seen a lot going on with terrain, and I think people still just find terrain to be really, really, really oppressive with other mons that we have access to as well, like Uxie, Grafai, and even OTR Diancie sees a good amount of use still. So I want y'all to let me know your thoughts down below. How happy are you about Titan ban? Do you also want to look at like Tails or Cinccino? Do any of these things here, Legion, Oricorio, terrain, any of those catch your eye? Is there something that's completely unlisted? Rip Bozo is crazy. You are so lucky I don't want to moderate right now, Mr. Joe. But yeah, let me know your thoughts down below where NU is. Of course, we have this enjoyment about 6.2 as well as balance of NU. That would, of course, be pre-Titan ban, so we'll see where that goes. Hope to get that higher. And I hope all y'all enjoyed, of course, and catch you in the next one. Peace.